Let's talk about greater expectations. They say, show me your friends and I will tell you who you are. They say, you can take a person out of the ghetto, but you can never take the ghetto out of a person. There are countless sayings that condemn people to the negative environments, families, or spaces that they may come from. There are so many who are born and who have grown up in spaces that place no and low expectations on them. So low and so absent of expectation that the people themselves don't feel any compulsion or any need to actually even disappoint you. They say, well, no one expected me to do well anyway, so let me not do well. Norman Vincent Peale tells the story of going through the dusty streets of Hong Kong. He came across a tattoo parlor, and amongst the various tattoos that he saw in the shop window being advertised, he saw these words. The words were, "Born to lose." He was so disturbed, he went into the tattoo parlor and he spoke to the owner and he said, people actually get this on their body? And the tattoo parlor owner said, before tattoo on skin, tattoo in mind. And there are so many who have created these internal negative environments for themselves, or other people have just surrounded them with words that are lifeless, ideas about themselves that have no hope. And so they create this negative, born to lose environment within them. Mark chapter 6 tells the story of what happens when people refuse to rise above the negative labels that have been placed on them. Mark chapter 6. In Mark chapter 6, Jesus is going back to his hometown of Nazareth. The homeboy is going home. His miracles, his power, his wisdom have now been noised everywhere. He is on full hype. He is on full hype and everybody is looking and hearing about him. Jesus returns home, and if you read the context of the story, you understand that Jesus is actually going home to find disciples from his hometown. Jesus wants to keep the blessing in the hometown family. But as you read the story and see the way in which Jesus is disrespected and devalued and dismissed and denigrated and almost just run out of town, you're left holding your head thinking, how is that even possible? How did that happen? It's so bad that Mark says Jesus couldn't even really do any great miracles. He healed a couple of people and then he bounced. He was gone. How is that possible? How is that even possible? Let me suggest a few things coming out of this story in Mark chapter 6. Number one, Nazareth believed its bad press. Nazareth was a regional joke in first century Palestine. It was. There are traditions that say, amongst other things, the Pharisees used to pray that they would pray and thank God that they were not born in Nazareth. When Nathanael asked the question of the Messiah and was told he was from Nazareth, and Nathanael said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Nathanael wasn't being sarcastic. He was honestly being honest. He was like, no, prophets don't come from Nazareth. Does anything good come out of Nazareth? It was that. And the people of the town believed their bad press. They had convinced themselves of the bad press. I wonder how many of us have grown up. I know I have grown up and heard people try to remind me of the negativity that I once lived in and try to place it over my whole life. And I wonder how many of us do that. Hear that negativity and believe that bad press about our own selves, or what people think now is still our own selves. Number two, they despised Jesus for believing what God said about him. At Jesus' baptism, when he came out of the water, he heard God said, this is my beloved son and I love him bad. This is my beloved son, in him I am well pleased. This is my beloved son, hear him. And Jesus chose to believe that. Regardless of the place that he was from, He would not be defined by the place that he was from. He chose to be defined by the way God was looking at him. I remember God said to me when I was 25, coming back into this space of faith, having to deal with all the negativity behind me in my 20s. I remember God saying to me, Eddie, listen, no matter how many people write you off, I'm writing with a bigger pen. I never forget that. So define yourself by what I am writing in your life now. Forget everything behind you. And Jesus chose to believe what God was saying. And then number 3, Nazareth failed to understand that the kingdom is a kingdom of greater expectations. You see, they looked at Jesus and asked, why him? God looked at Jesus and asked, why not him? They looked at Nazareth and said, why here? God looked at Nazareth and said, why not there? Because the kingdom is a kingdom of greater expectations. And to relegate the kingdom to the things that we know and the things that we control and the expectations we have is really just to create a kingdom of your own doing. God is calling us into a kingdom that is so great that we have to realize unless he's in it, we can't even begin to wonder how we're going to control it, how we're going to control the situation, how we're going to do what God is asking us to do, how we're going to be able to do this, because it is a kingdom of greater expectations. You are called to believe that not only can God take you out of the ghetto, but he can take the ghetto out of you. But like his son, he's going to send you back to the ghetto. He's going to send you back to the ghetto to let people know that he is present, that he is here, and that he's a greater, he is a God of greater expectations. A friend of mine was murdered 12 years ago, and I was called to do the funeral. I preached the funeral. Everybody that I grew up with was there, from my high school days all the way through, primary school days all the way through. When the funeral was finished, I was standing by the hearse as they was bringing the body in. A friend of mine who I grew up with, hardened man, beautiful spirit, walked up to me, just made a beeline for me. And when he got to me, he hugged me deep, and we hugged there, just standing by the hearse. And he said, Eddie, whatever it is that you have, I want it. I want it. Because he sensed in my life the life he needed in his life. He came to faith. Because this kingdom of God is a kingdom of greater expectations.